Hello and welcome to the Learning Love Podcast, brought to you by the Learning Love Foundation, helping people transform how they love, live, and lead. I'm your host, Dr. Mark A. Hicks, and I want to thank you for joining us today as we spend some time learning love. Love is the answer. Now all we have to do is explore all the questions. And I've got a great question for you today, and it's a question that a lot of people ask. And that question is, in a relationship, when do we let something go, or when do we address it? When something's bothering us, our spouse or a friend or a coworker does something that annoys us, but particularly within our families, when do we let it go, and when do we confront these things and we address things that are bothering us? When do we show grace, and when do we speak the truth? Now, you can do both at the same time, but basically what we're talking about here is there's time to confront things because somebody has crossed a line, and that's not what we can do, and that's not going to be acceptable in the relationship, and that needs to be confronted. But, man, people make mistakes. People are not perfect. If we are going to be on our spouse every time they make a little mistake, we're not going to have a very happy marriage because we're going to be on them all the time. If we are going to hassle our kids or our coworkers or anyone else every time they make a small mistake or have a stray word that came out the wrong way, if we're going to make a huge issue over that, we're going to be fighting all the time, and it's just going to be demoralizing. And there's families that live like that. That's no way to live. We need to learn to let things go. And yet, if we let everything go, then we become a doormat. Those are abusive situations that we may be abused. There may be toxic situations that we're scared to confront things, and we just let everything go. And when we do that, one, as I said, we make ourselves a doormat, and two, we have a tendency to eventually blow up. Everyone has a line. Everyone has a limit. And so we have a tendency to let things go, let things go, let things go, let things go. And then one day, some tiny little thing happens, and we absolutely explode. And everyone around us is thinking, where did that come from? That it was just this tiny little thing. This was nothing. What are you exploding over this for? Why are you so angry? And so there has to be a good, healthy balance. Some people are avoiders by nature. They just want to let everything go there. They don't like conflict. They want to avoid conflict at all cost, or at least most cost. They want things to be nice and quiet, and they withdraw rather than confront, because they want to avoid conflict. Other people, by personality, are more confronters. They don't like letting things go. They want to address everything. They want to make sure that their opinion is heard and their boundaries are set and everybody knows where they stand. And neither one of those is a bad thing. It's okay to be an avoider. It's okay to be a confronter. Both of those can be healthy within reason. But we have to find some moderation. The truth, the healthy spot is really in between. Because every healthy relationship has a strong measure of grace, but also a strong measure of truth-telling. It is a time to let things go, and there's a time to make sure we speak up and confront things and make sure that people know that was a line, that we don't do that. I don't want that done to me or around me in this relationship, whatever it might be. There's a healthy spot for us to find. And that comes down to discernment, that we have to learn where that spot is. There is no absolute on this. It does depend on the personality of the family. It depends on the personality of the group, the people involved. There's some give and take there. But it is not a matter of we always let things go or we always confront things. If we're in one of those two camps, we're in a bad spot. We're creating very difficult relationships. It's somewhere in the middle. You don't have to be perfect on this, okay? No one finds an absolute perfect spot for this of how do we balance grace and truth? How do we let things go? And when do we confront things? No one does it perfect every time, all the time, and that's okay. We don't have to be perfect, but we want to avoid the extremes. We want to stay there in that nice, healthy, moderate place where we can do both, depending on the situation, that we can confront when we need to, and we have the ability to let things go when we need to. So how do we know? How do we go about discerning when do we let things go and when do we confront things? Well, here's a really helpful question. Here's something that you can kind of ask yourself when you're considering, do I need to confront this or not? Don't just ask, does this bother me? Okay, if you're asking the question, then yeah, it bothers you. That's not the question. And we don't need to fly off the handle every time something bothers us. We don't need to confront everything because, again, people make mistakes, stuff happens. A little patience can take us a long way sometimes. A better question is not, does this bother me? A better question is, will this matter in a week or a month or a year? Is this something that is going to matter later? What we want to avoid is confronting things that are really a one-time event. If your spouse kind of snaps at you and that's not their personality and you think, how dare they snap at me? I don't need to be snapped at like that. But that's not really their personality. That's not what they do. It almost never happens. That's not really the time to confront. It may be a time to ask, hey, you feeling okay? What's going on? How you feeling? Kind of find out what's happening. One-time events, one moment in time. It's a good time to let things go. Everybody has a bad day. Everybody makes mistakes. Everybody has impatient moments or says things they really didn't mean sometimes. Things just come out the wrong way occasionally. We're human. And so if it's a one-time event, it's really not something that happens consistently. It may bother you a lot. It may be something that really hit you the wrong way, and it might upset you, but that might be a time to step back and think, you know what? That's really never happened before. That's not common with my spouse to act like that. So I'm just going to let that go and think maybe they're having a bad day. Maybe that came out the wrong way. I don't need to fly off the handle or feel like I have to defend myself because that was a one-time event. One-time events are really good things to let go. And like I said, maybe it's time to check in. Say, hey, you feeling okay today? That's not like you to snap like that. You doing all right? And so don't necessarily, have to start a fight or react with anger or defensiveness on one-time events. Maybe a good time to let things go. When it's not a pattern and it's rooted in someone's mood, okay? They're just in a bad mood today. And they're not usually in a bad mood. That's not how they usually live. But you can just tell when some people walk in the door and think, oh, wow, they're usually in a good mood, but not today. Again, you can ask, hey, you okay? Can I help? Things like that. That can be really good for relationships to kind of inquire, be curious. But if what is happening is rooted in a mood, it's not a pattern, it's a one-time event, it's a very rare event, and it's because they are in a bad mood, probably good to let it go. It's not part of their personality. It's not part of your relationship. It's just a bad day. Let bad days go. React with more concern, caring, compassion than with defensiveness. Really good time to let stuff go when it's not part of a pattern. Another good thing to let go, but is more difficult, is certain what we might call harmless personality traits. Now, these can be a little more difficult. One-time events, we might be able to just take a breath and say, okay, that's not really like them. I'll let that go. But if it is a pattern, it's something that's continuous in their personality, but it's pretty harmless. Okay? Now, I'm going to upset some of you with this, but I'm going to say it. Being messy is a personality trait. It's not an attack on you if you're a neat freak. Okay? Now, there's limits. Hoarding, extreme messiness, that's a different matter. But being a little cluttered, being a little bit messy is not an attack on you, even if you're kind of a really neat person. And that might be a personality trait that you really just wish your spouse didn't have. But that might be a good thing to let go. Because, again, these are personality traits. Being messy versus being clean or neat is a personality trait. Being quiet versus being talkative is a personality trait. Being highly structured and organized versus being kind of a person who is more free-flowing and you're willing to wing it, those are personality traits. And those are very difficult to change. Okay? You can nag somebody to the end of time. You can fuss at somebody until you are blue in the face. It is going to be very difficult for you to change their personality. And so a lot of times people cause a lot of marital problems because they want to change their spouse from a messy person to a neat freak. And they want to change their spouse from being a quiet person to a talkative person that shares a lot of things, or a person who's kind of a free-flowing person into a highly structured person, or vice versa. Sometimes the messy people get really annoyed that everything's cleaned all the time. Why do we have to be cleaning all the time? Why is there got to be all this organization? Why do we have to talk everything out? Why can't we just be quiet and watch television sometimes? It can run both ways. We can get on each other's nerves. But you know what? At the end of the day, those are personality traits, and they're pretty harmless. Again, if they go to extremes, if we're talking about a messy person who's not just messy, but they're a hoarder, they're extremely messy, there's a health code violation, okay, that's different. Or if we're talking about a neat person who is not just neat and clean and tidy, but they are obsessive. They may be prone towards an obsessive compulsive personality, and that can be a disorder, obsessive compulsive personality disorder. That when we have those extremes, yes, those need to be confronted. But if they are what we might call just the kind of normal range, that some people are more messy, some people are more clean, neat, tidy, some people are more quiet, some people are more talkative, some are more organized, some are more free-flowing and kind of wing it. Those are personality traits. And as long as they are kind of moderate in the middle, might be a good thing to let go. If they get to extremes, that's a different matter. But as long as they're sort of moderate, you can save yourself a lot of hassle, because I'm telling you, you will not change a person's personality. You can badger them to death. And even if you could force them to be something different, you're going to lose a lot in that fight, because they're not going to be them anymore. They're going to be forcing a change that is not natural to them. And when you do that through force in a relationship, it costs you a lot. It is not healthy for a relationship. So again, there's not an absolute line there. How messy is too messy? When does neat become obsessive? Those can be difficult lines to draw. But as long as we're kind of in the middle in a harmless way, let some stuff go. Your spouse is not going to be perfect. Your coworkers are not going to be perfect. People are not perfect. And so if it's harmless personality traits, even if it's kind of annoying to you, learn to show some grace. You're going to have a lot better relationship if you do that. However, there are times to make sure we confront things. It is not healthy to always let things go just to keep the peace. There are times that we do have to set boundaries, and we do have to let people know where we stand on things, even within our own family. And now we're talking about things that are patterns that are not harmless. Okay, not harmless personality traits, not one-time events, but things that are patterns of behavior that are things like repeated disrespect, repeated broken commitments, consistently withdrawing emotionally. These kinds of things are actions that are really damaging. And if somebody, again, once in a while makes a mistake, says something wrong, breaks the promise, once in the span of the relationship, we may let things go. But when these things become a pattern, when we can no longer trust our partner because they continually break promises and commitments, when we feel completely disrespected in a relationship because we're repeatedly being disrespected in that relationship, when we feel like we're living alone in a relationship because our partner continually emotionally withdraws from us, those kinds of things are things that need to be confronted. Okay, we don't just let these things go as a harmless personality trait, because they're doing actual damage to the relationship when we are disrespected or we can't trust our partner any longer. And so these kinds of patterns, when we start to see these patterns emerge, that's when we need to confront. That's when we need to bring it up and have some discussions. And as I'm always saying, don't be afraid to get help. Okay, because these discussions can be really tough. If a person has fallen into these kind of patterns, they've probably done so because they've got some serious stuff going on. All right. If they are angry all the time and bitter and disrespecting you as their partner continuously, they've probably got some anger issues. They've got some bitterness. They've got some things going on that may be beyond your ability to just talk it out with them. And so don't be afraid to get help. But these are things that don't need to be let go. If we're falling into a thing about, well, yes, they continually disrespect me, I feel completely disrespected and put down and beat down in this relationship, but I don't want to say anything because it might cause trouble. Well, you already have trouble at that point. Your relationship is not at a good place. And so when we get into these destructive patterns, we absolutely need to bring it up. We absolutely need to talk about it. We do not need to keep that a secret. And we need to get help. If it can't be resolved pretty quickly, if we don't get a good response to that and start working through it together pretty quickly, don't be afraid to get help. There's help available. Find it. I always say you'd go to a doctor if you were sick, and you'd go to a dentist if you had a toothache, and you'd go to a mechanic if your car wasn't running correctly. Your marriage is important too. It's just as important than your car and your teeth. Okay, so let's not just leave it to chance or just wing it. find some help, because these are important things. The other time that we do need to confront things is when it violates our values. Now, again, this can be argued. People say, well, somebody being messy, that violates my values. Values are more about respect and trust and honesty, not about personality traits. And so be careful where you draw that line. But when somebody is violating your values within a relationship, you need to speak up. You need to let them know, this is a deeply held value for me, and I can't just let this go. We're going to need to talk through this. When we get into those places where we start to feel that we are not valued, that our values are being targeted or being harmed, that's the time to speak up. If we don't, we're going to tend to fade away in that relationship. Okay, we're going to tend to disappear. When we let things go that are a violation of our values, or they are repeated patterns that disrespect us, that put us down, that do serious harm within the relationship, when we just let that stuff go because we don't want to cause trouble, we don't want to make any waves, we don't want to disrupt the peace, we're going to tend over time to fade away. That we're going to withdraw. We're going to disappear within the relationship. We're going to become more and more defensive, because if it's a pattern, we know it's coming. If it's a pattern of behavior that harms us, that hurts us, and it is a pattern that we see continuously, we're going to know it's coming. And so instinctively, we're going to start putting up barriers. We're going to start putting up walls to make sure that we are protected. And that's going to cause damage in the relationship. And as I mentioned earlier, at some point, we may explode. We may reach a limit and absolutely explode because we've let that build up. Very rarely do relationships collapse overnight, but sometimes they seem to. Sometimes it looks like the relationship was going fine and then it just fell apart, at least to the people outside the relationship, extended family, friends. Your marriage may fall apart seemingly overnight to them, but that's not really how it works. Over time, things build up. And sometimes relationships can collapse because we have built so many barriers, so many walls to protect ourselves. We faded away in the relationship until there is no relationship. And eventually, maybe we explode and we go crazy over some small thing because we just can't take it anymore. And that's understandable when we let that build up so much, and it can collapse the entire relationship. So if it's a pattern that continually happens, make sure we confront it. If it is something that is a value that you hold dearly, make sure you speak up and let your partner know that. But if it's a harmless personality trait, even if we find it annoying, everybody's got their little annoying traits. No, you're not going to find anybody on earth that doesn't annoy you a little bit. We all annoy each other. That's okay. It's harmless enough. If it's a one-time thing, let it go. Look for patterns. Ask yourself, is this a pattern? Have I seen this before? Make sure this is something that is really of value to you, and it's going to make a difference a week, a month, a year from now. Otherwise, we're just reacting to our own ego because we didn't like this or that. It's not a matter of preferences. It's not a matter of ego. It's a matter of salvaging the relationship by knowing when to confront things and when to let things go. And if you develop this skill, you're going to make life so much easier on yourself, and you're going to be able to work out the problems, especially if you're willing to get help. You'll have a better chance of working out those problems that are causing you issues in your relationship. And you're going to have a lot more peace because you're letting the little things go. The harmless personality traits, the one-time events that are just a bad day, take a breath, let those go. You'll have a lot more peace in your relationship, and you'll be spending your energy fixing the things that really need to be fixed. And that's my thoughts this week as we are looking to build a healthy life with healthy relationships. This program is brought to you by the Learning Love Foundation, and you can find out more by going to learninglovefoundation.com. My thanks, as always, to my producer, Abby Graves of Abby Grace Productions, and thank you to all of you for listening. Until next week, love well, everyone.